Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something today that blends history with, well, a touch of the unexplained.
Sounds intriguing.
Oh, it is. We're talking about the Battle of Hastings, 1066, William the Conqueror facing off against King Harold.
A pivotal moment in English history.
Absolutely a turning point. But here's where it gets interesting. One of our listeners sent us some material about a possible UFO sighting during the battle.
A UFO in 1066.
You got it. A UFO in 1066. Talk about adding an unexpected twist to an already significant event. Before we get into the UFO, though, let's set the stage a bit.
Good idea. To truly understand the weight of this possible sighting, we need to get a feel for what England was like back then. Think political instability, power struggles, a world very different from our own.
Yeah, paint us a picture of England in 1066.
Well, King Edward the Confessor had just died, and there was no clear heir to the throne.
Uh-oh. That sounds like a recipe for trouble.
It was. It triggered a huge succession crisis with multiple claimants battling for power.
So the Battle of Hastings wasn't just some minor squabble.
Not at all. It was a clash of civilizations. Norman versus Anglo-Saxon. The fate of England hung in the balance. The outcome of this one battle would decide the language, the laws, even the culture of England for centuries to come.
Wow. Can you imagine the pressure? Knowing that a single battle could completely reshape your world like that, it's a perspective that's hard for us to even grasp today.
Absolutely.
Mm.
But it really speaks to the power those battles held back then. Okay, so we've got this backdrop of political turmoil, a clash of cultures, and then enter the UFO.
Right. Let's bring that UFO into the picture now. What do the sources actually tell us?
Well, what's fascinating is that there are multiple accounts from that time, and they seem to be independent of each other. They describe something unusual in the sky, something that people couldn't explain.
So this isn't just one person's wild imagination running away with them.
No, it seems to be more than that. They talk about a bright light, strange movements, something truly out of the ordinary for people back then.
And what kind of movements are we talking about? Do the accounts give specifics?
Some mention rapid, darting motions, almost like it was zipping around. Others describe it as hovering silently. There are even some descriptions of figures being seen inside this mysterious object.
Wow, figures inside. That's a whole other level of strange. Of course, it's hard to verify stories from nearly 1,000 years ago, right?
It is, you're absolutely right. But these accounts offer a glimpse into how medieval people tried to make sense of things they couldn't explain.
It makes you wonder what must have been going through their minds, seeing something so bizarre in the sky, especially during such a chaotic time. So the big question now is, what was it?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Let's start with the most straightforward explanation, a natural phenomenon. Could it have been a comet, a meteor, maybe some unusual atmospheric event that people back then just didn't have the scientific knowledge to understand?
That's definitely a possibility. I mean, they didn't have telescopes or, the internet to look things up. But some of the accounts describe movements that seem a bit more complex than just a shooting star.
That's a good point. So then we have to ask ourselves, were there any technologies back in 1066 that could even come close to what they were describing?
Right, because hot air balloons, for example, weren't around for centuries.
Exactly. So early technology seems unlikely. Which brings us to another possibility. Maybe this wasn't seen as technology at all. What if it was seen as a sign from a higher power?
Ah, that makes sense given how important religion was at the time.
Right. People saw celestial events as omens all the time, messages from God. Maybe they thought this object was a sign, some kind of divine intervention in the battle. What do you think?
I can see how people would interpret it that way, but of course we can't forget the most popular theory. What about aliens?
Ah, yes, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. It always captures the imagination. But it's important to consider this theory within the context of what we know about UFOs today. These accounts are definitely interesting, but they don't really match up with the patterns we typically see in modern UFO reports.
So, aliens are a fun thought, but maybe not the most likely explanation in this case. What are your thoughts on all of this so far? Are you leaning towards any particular theory? Do you have any other ideas about what those people might have seen in the sky that night? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
It really is a puzzle, isn't it? A
Mhm.
historical mystery with no easy answers. But even though we may never know for sure what that object was, we do know that the battle itself had a huge impact on England.
Yeah, let's get back to the Battle of Hastings and what it meant for England. What were the big changes that came about because of it?
Well, William the Conqueror's victory was a turning point. It marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule and the beginning of the Norman era. That had a ripple effect on almost every part of English life, from the language to the laws.
So England basically got a major makeover thanks to the Normans, huh? What were some of the specific changes that happened?
Oh, tons of things changed. For one, the entire power structure was flipped on its head. The old Anglo-Saxon nobility was mostly replaced by Norman lords who were loyal to William. This led to the rise of feudalism, that system where land was granted in exchange for military service and loyalty.
So the whole social and political landscape was reshaped. What about the English language? Did that change too?
Definitely. Norman French, the language of the new ruling class, started to mix with Old English. That eventually led to the development of Middle English, which is kind of like the ancestor of the English we speak today.
It's amazing how words we use today can be traced back to that Norman influence. What other big changes did the Normans bring to England?
Well, they were known for being fantastic builders. They introduced all these new architectural techniques and styles. That's why we see so many incredible castles and cathedrals across England that were built during that time.
So the Norman conquest had a lasting impact on English architecture too. It's incredible how one battle can have echoes that last for centuries.
It really is. And it's not just about physical buildings either. The Normans also brought new legal concepts and ways of governing. Some of those ideas still form the basis of English law today. The Battle of Hastings truly shaped England's identity in a profound way.
It really makes you think about how these seemingly isolated moments in history can have such far-reaching consequences. Now, going back to that mysterious UFO for a moment, even if we never know for sure what it was, do you think its appearance, or at least how people perceived it, could have affected the outcome of the battle?
That's an interesting question. It's tough to say for sure, but it's certainly possible that the sighting, no matter what it really was, could have influenced the morale of the troops or even swayed public opinion.
Just imagine you're a soldier on that battlefield, scared, exhausted, and then suddenly you see something totally unexplainable up in the sky. That's gonna mess with your head a bit.
For sure. People could easily have seen it as some kind of divine omen, a sign of favor or disfavor from the heavens. And those kinds of beliefs could have had a huge impact on how the battle played out.
It makes you realize how much of history is shaped not just by the events themselves, but by how people understand and interpret those events. Their beliefs, fears, hopes, superstitions, all those things play a role in how things unfold and how they're remembered.
Absolutely. History isn't just about dry facts and dates. It's a story that's woven together with human perception, beliefs, and yes, even a bit of superstition. And those threads of the unknown, the things we can't quite explain, those can often be the most interesting and thought-provoking parts of the story.
Well said. So, what can we take away from all of this? Looking back on this event from almost 1,000 years in the future, what have we learned from exploring the Battle of Hastings and this mysterious visitor in the sky?
I think it shows how important it is to approach history, and any mystery, for that matter, with a mix of critical thinking and an open mind. We need to look closely at the evidence, consider different perspectives, and accept that some questions might not have clear-cut answers.
It's about embracing the unknown, recognizing that history isn't always a neat and tidy story. There are gaps and uncertainties, and some mysteries might never be fully solved.
Exactly. And maybe that's what makes history so fascinating. It's an invitation to keep questioning, to keep exploring, and to appreciate that the past is a mix of things we know for sure and things that will always remain a bit of a mystery.
Okay, so we've traveled to the battlefields of Hastings, we've considered how medieval people viewed the cosmos, and we've even entertained the idea of alien visitors. Before we wrap up this deep dive, though, there's one final question to ponder. What if this mysterious object, whether it was a natural event or something totally out there, what if it actually helped create the legends and stories that we know about the Battle of Hastings?
That's a really cool thought. You're suggesting that this unexplained thing, this little glitch in the historical record, maybe it actually shaped the way we tell the story of the battle itself.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how many other historical accounts might have been influenced or even exaggerated by people encountering the unknown.
Right, it's like sprinkling a bit of magic onto an already epic story. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the Battle of Hastings still fascinates people after all these years. It has this added layer of mystery, this hint of something beyond our understanding.
Exactly. It reminds us that history isn't just a list of names and dates. It's a living story that's always being reshaped and reinterpreted through human experience, and sometimes through these encounters with the unexplained.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive, we might never truly know what that strange object over the Battle of Hastings really was, but we can say for sure that it adds a layer of wonder and mystery to a really important moment in history.
And I think even more importantly, it reminds us that history is full of mysteries waiting to be solved. It encourages us to keep asking questions, to keep exploring, and to stay open to the idea that there's always more to learn, even about events that happened a long time ago.
Maybe someday we'll find some new evidence that finally explains the Hastings UFO. Or maybe it'll always be an enigma, a little question mark in the grand story of history. Either way, it's been a fascinating journey exploring this blend of history and the unexplained. What are your final thoughts as we close out this deep dive?
For me, the real reward is the journey of discovery. So keep digging, keep asking those questions, and most importantly, hold on to that sense of wonder as you delve deeper into the amazing world of history and the unexplained.
Well said. And with that, we conclude our deep dive into the Battle of Hastings and its mysterious visitor from the sky. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and never be afraid to ask the big questions.